Good afternoon or morning or evening, whenever you are watching this, everyone. My name is Mike Dokter. I am the coach of the House High School girls basketball team out of Muskegon, Michigan. And we are reading together Chop Wood, Carry Water, going through some thoughts for the players that are new, or if you're just watching this, welcome. If you like what you see, click on the playlist. You can see the rest of the book as well. And we are going to be reading chapters 21 and 22 in this video with some thoughts. So, chapter 21 of Chop Wood, Carry Water by Joshua Medcalf, The Road Signs on the Path to Mastery. On a beautiful fall day while John was training, Akira sat nearby watching as John shot arrow after arrow. Eventually, he grabbed 2 cups of water and handed one to John. "Time for a break, John." John was happy to oblige, and they sat in silence for a minute. Then Akira said, "Have I told you lately that I love to watch you shoot, and I'm very proud of you?" John's face turned a little red as he replied, "Yes, you tell me every week." "Good," Akira nodded. I nodded. "Did you know that I drove trucks all over Asia for 2 years while I was in my early 20s? "Really? I didn't even know they had cars back then." John grinned at his own joke as Akira shook his head. "I'm not that old, John. Need I remind you of our shooting night in the dark?" John laughed. "Of course not. I'll never forget that." The interesting thing about driving trucks back then was without navigational technology, we depended on a lot on road signs to help us. You would often snap out of a haze and wonder, "Wait a minute, am I going the right direction?" He looked off for a minute and then continued. "The same thing often happens to people in their teams, businesses, corporations, and families. The road signs on the path to mastery are similar regardless of the context of where we find ourselves at any particular time in life. We can take solace in knowing that we are going the right direction by the signs on the road. Here are some of those signs. This is hard. I don't feel like doing blank today. Everyone else has more time than me. I don't feel like this is making a difference. Almost no one is doing this." Sound familiar? The thing about all these signs is that they provide information, but they don't give a whole lot of instruction. Instead, they're more like little mile markers or rest stop signs that tell us where things are. But the great thing about most highways is they don't just provide information, they actually provide instruction that will help us move safely and efficiently towards our destination. These are the yellow diamond signs that we see instructing us about a speed change or a sharp bend in the road, uneven roads, or road work ahead. The road signs on the path to mastery are no different. So what are some of the road signs on the path to mastery's instructions? Talk to yourself instead of listening to yourself. Ask the question, what is the one thing I can do to make this situation better, rather than, why is this happening to me? Live by principles rather than feelings. Finally, there are warning signs on the path to mastery as well. They are signs that warn us about the results of our choices. On the highway, we see warning signs about fines in work zones, fines for littering, fines for HOV violators. They have boundaries that we must operate in, or else there will be consequences. The path to mastery is marked with those as well. Your choice creates your challenge. You are building your own house. Your choice creates a challenge for those on your team. You will reap what you sow. The grass is greener where you water it. The wise man finds diamonds in his own land. Even though the path to mastery is available to everyone, very few will choose to take it. Will there be obstacles? Yes. Will there be people who tried to hold you back? Yes. Will there be circumstances that create challenges outside of your control? Yes. Will it be lonely at times? Yes. But choosing to believe that everything happens and anything happens is in your best interest and will turn all of the challenges and circumstances into a refinery that will shape your character and skills and will develop within you the ability to change the world. John nodded amazed. Then a smile grew on his face and he began to laugh. "Something funny, John?" He looked at his sensei and grinned. "Sure is. I just pictured you in a trucker's hat." Kira began to laugh. "Aren't you glad I didn't stick to trucking? I know I am." So that's chapter 21, Road Signs on the Path to Mastery. Here's my thoughts on that. We're going to go through difficult times. You're going to go through difficult times. I'm going through challenging times at work in my career right now. Not as a result of anything I did, but just because of how things are changing. And pretty much all of the things that they talked about there are things that I'm feeling, things that I'm talking about. Everybody else has more time. Am I good enough for this? Why is this happening? What is going on? How can I do this? Those are all little road signs that I know are going to help make me better, and you're going to find those too. Maybe it has to do with your playing time. Maybe it has to do with the attitude on your team. Maybe it has to do with something that's going on in school. Just know that all these things are working to help refine you. Remember the chapter about going up the rough side of the mountain? That's a good sign. If everything was smooth, then we wouldn't have any feedback that tells us that we're getting better and tells us how to adjust and improve. We need to adjust and improve. Progress over perfection. Perfection is never going to be there. But if we can understand the progress in us, on the way to mastering our craft, the much better off we're going to be. So that was chapter 21. Here is chapter 22. Be where your feet are. Be where your feet are. A few more years passed, and John began to hit the far target with some consistency, becoming more and more accurate. His excitement grew because the annual apprentice tournament was coming up, and he felt like he would finally be his time to shine and prove to everyone how good he had become. But that week, John really began to struggle with a concept he had just learned in training. A sensei had talked about the need to be fully absorbed in the moment. The way he described it, it was almost as if the greatest samurai archers arrived at a place where they were so fully absorbed in the moment, they melded with the bow and arrow so that there were no longer two separate things but became one. It reminded John of a concept he had been taught in a basketball mentor skills workshop in high school. The teacher had shared the importance of playing present. He told John that the majority of people feel pressure and never come close to playing to their potential because they never play present. Instead, they play in the past or the future, which is where they feel the pressure. The reality is there's no such thing as pressure in the present moment. John didn't understand how to play present, but had made a commitment to himself to try to learn how. He had even reached out to a few people on Twitter trying to discover how to be more effective at playing present. His favorite response simply said, sit in the front row away from friends and teammates, turn off your phone, take notes by hand for every class. One afternoon, John was so absorbed with thinking this through that he nearly ran headfirst into a tree onto the shooting range. Stumbling, he caught himself as, "Good catch. I thought you were going down." It was Akira, who had seen the whole thing and couldn't help but let out a big belly laugh. John joined in, red with embarrassment, as Akira continued. "What are you thinking about? It must be something big if you're walking into trees thinking about it." John started explaining how confused he was by the concept of playing present. He shared that his favorite response from years ago about sitting in the front row. Akira nodded, quizzical. "So did you do what he told you to do?" John squirmed a bit, mumbling something indiscernible. Akira said, "I didn't think you had, or you wouldn't be struggling with the concept. Here's what you must understand. To play present, you must first learn to live present. Remember, you are always training." John nodded, realizing something. "I'm also late. Now I have to go chop wood and carry water." He bowed to his sensei to leave, but Akira wasn't finished. "Excuse me?" he said. "John, there's only one thing you have to do in life, and that is die. You're always going to do what you want to do, because there is always a choice. You may not like the choices or the consequences, but you always have a choice. When you tell yourself that you have to do something, it creates negative internal energy. But when you realize that you want to do something, it creates a more beneficial internal energy." John nodded. "Then let me correct myself. I want to go chop wood and carry water now." Akira smiled, watching his apprentice go, proud of how John had been transformed. All right, so that's a cool chapter and shorter chapter, and we got a shorter video here, which is good, if I can stop talking in the next couple minutes, which I promise to do. So here's the idea of playing present. Oftentimes we get riled up by the mistakes we've made in the past or what we think the future is going to be. The reality is we can't do anything about the past, and we don't know what the future holds. We have no idea if we're going to make that free throw. We have no idea if we're going to turn the ball over. We have no idea if we're going to win the game. The only thing we can absolutely control is how we choose to view the present moment. That's why basketball IQ, soft skills, what they call EQ instead of IQ, which is emotional intelligence, is so important. If we can take ourselves out of all of this huge timeline we've created for ourselves of this happened in the past, or I failed at this, or I missed that last free throw, or I'm not going to make that and one, or all of that pressure and everything else, then we can really choose to be in that present moment. And if we choose to be in that present moment, our chances of success go up dramatically. Because the only thing we can absolutely control are our actions and our attitude. We don't have to do anything. Like the author said, the only thing we have to do is die. So we can choose how we approach everything else. Are we giving 100% in practice? Are we trying to learn everything we can? Are we focusing in on the conversations we have with other people? I know it doesn't seem like a lot right now, but the reality is most of this stuff that's in this book, it's small little things. There's not the one huge massive thing that's going to change everything. It's a bunch of small things that stacked up over time. The inches, remember from like chapter 2 or 3, the little inches stacked up over and over can eventually reach around the world. So remember that, to play present, be present, live present. Don't worry about all the stuff and all the junk that's happened in the past. Don't worry about what that one coach said to you. Don't worry about what that one player said about you. Don't worry if you started and now you're on the bench. Don't worry if you didn't make the team. Don't worry about any of that nonsense. Don't worry about any of it. Instead, learn to live present. You're here right now. Let's make the most of it. We'll see you next time.